It's a funny thing, life in this city. One minute you're chasing down a hot dog vendor for skipping out on his permit. The next, you're staring across an interrogation table at the guy who used to steal your lunch money back in Lincoln High. Except now, Mikey the Mouth Mangano wasn't just some small time hustler anymore. He was our prime suspect, and I was the NYPD detective about to bring his whole house of cards crashing down. Growing up in Queens, becoming a cop wasn't exactly on my radar. I was more the library type, kept my head down, aced my exams, tried to stay invisible. My life was about as exciting as watching paint dry, especially compared to some of the personalities bouncing around our class. Mikey was definitely one of those personalities. The guy was pure charisma, could talk his way out of a locked room, and had this knack for making you think you were his best friend, even if he just lifted your wallet. He wasn't malicious, just opportunistic. Always had some angle going, whether it was selling exclusive Yankee tickets that were probably photocopied or running a betting pool on which teacher would crack first during finals high school stuff, Nobody took it too seriously. After graduation, Mikey vanished into the city's noise like everyone else. I went to John Jay, got my badge, and ended up in financial crimes down in the precinct white-collar stuff, not exactly the gritty cop drama you see on TV. No car chases or shootouts, mostly spreadsheets and bank statements. It's about tracing the digital breadcrumbs, figuring out how some slick operator managed to bleed people dry without leaving a single drop of blood. Tedious, yeah, sometimes. But when you unravel a complex scheme, when you see the pieces click into place, it's a rush, a real satisfaction. So when Captain Davies dropped a file on my desk marked Operation Clean Sweep, I didn't think twice. Just another fraud case, some guy running a fake investment scam. Victims were your average Joes and Janes, small business owners, retirees, people who'd put their trust and their life savings in the wrong hands. I started flipping through the prelim report, and then the name jumped out. Michael A. Mangano. I actually stopped breathing for a second. Mangano, no way. My Mikey, the guy who once convinced Mrs. Henderson that his goldfish ate his algebra homework, had to be a different Mikey. Mangano, New York's crawling with them. Then I saw the mugshot, and it was him. Same cocky grin, same sharp eyes that always looked like they knew something you didn't, only now. Instead of a ripped denim jacket, he was rocking a tailored suit, looking like he actually had something legit to sell. For a minute, it was like the city noise faded away, just me and Mikey Mangano back in Mrs. Henderson's class. Except this wasn't history anymore. This was real life, and Mikey wasn't hustling kids out of lunch money. He was crushing lives, and it was my job to stop him. First thing after the mugshot hit me, I pulled up Mikey's full file, needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. Answer deep as the East River. He'd been on our radar for months, a ghost in the machine. Every time we thought we had him pinned, he'd vanish, leaving behind a trail of shell corporations, empty bank accounts, and a chorus of angry victims. Turns out Mikey wasn't just running a Ponzi scheme. He was running a Ponzi on steroids. Promised insane returns, sucked in new investors to pay off the old ones. Skimmed the cream off the top classic playbook. But Mikey didn't stop there. Forged documents, fake audits, even deep fake videos of supposed happy investors singing his praises. Next level con artistry, seriously twisted. But you had to admit, a little impressive in a sick way. Reading through the file, the memories of high school kept flooding back. Mikey's scams back then were harmless. Almost funny. Like the time he convinced half the senior class to chip in for a custom graduation banner he claimed he'd designed. Cash changed hands, promises were made, graduation day rolls around, no banner, Mikey just shrugs, buys pizza for everyone with the cash, and somehow everyone's laughing about it. That was Mikey's superpower charm. He made you feel like you were in on something special, an exclusive club, just for trusting him. And most of the time people bought it. Even I'd fallen for it a couple of times back in the day, but high school scams are one thing. Ripping off retirees, leaving them with nothing. That's a different kind of low. Digging deeper, I started piecing together Mikey's recent moves. He was operating under the name Liberty Investments. Sounded legit enough, red, white, and blue logo, all American promises, but everything about it was fake. The website, the testimonials, the fancy office address in the financial district, smoke and mirrors, victim interviews painted a picture of Mikey that hadn't changed much since Lincoln High. Still smooth talking, still oozing confidence, still able to make you believe the unbelievable. But now that charm was weaponized. He wasn't scamming for kicks. He was scamming to fund a lifestyle that would make Gatsby blush. Files showed a penthouse in Tribeca, a leased Maserati Instagram feed full of yachts in Monaco, and ringside seats at Knicks games. All part of the act. Proof he was a winner, a money magnet, and people were falling for it. Hook, line, and sinker. But not everyone. One victim, Mrs. Esposito, a retired teacher from Staten Island. She was like a bulldog, wouldn't let go. She'd sunk her entire retirement fund into Mikey's safe high-yield plan. When the checks bounced and Liberty investments vanished into thin air, she didn't just crumble, she went to war. Savings gone future, wiped out. She marched into the precinct, demanded answers, and wouldn't leave until someone listened. That's how Operation Clean Sweep landed on my desk. Reading Mrs. Esposito's statement, it lit a fire under me. Couldn't believe Mikey, the kid who cheated on pop quizzes by writing answers on his arm, had turned into someone this cold, this ruthless. And yet, staring at his mugshot again, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. He'd always been a swindler, just leveled up his game. Thing about guys like Mikey, they always think they're the smartest guy in the room, untouchable, invisible. That's where I came in. Once the shock of seeing Mikey's face wore off, it was game on. Captain Davies wasn't about to slow roll this just because I had a history with the target. Mikey had slipped through the net too many times, hopping burrows, bleeding new victims dry, then poof gone before the heat got too close. But this time we had a break, a solid tip. Mikey was setting up a meet with a potential investor. Our planned surveillance let the meet play out, catch Mikey in the act, record him making those impossible promises, flashing those forged documents, nail him cold. The meet was set for a trendy coffee shop in the West Village, all exposed brick and overpriced lattes, the kind of place where people drop names and pretend to close million-dollar deals. Classic Mikey move. I was assigned to surveillance. Sitting in an unmarked Crown Vic across the street, watching the city swirl around me, I couldn't help but wonder if Mikey would even recognize me. Years had passed. We were different people now, but still. Then he showed right on time, stepping out of a yellow cab like he owned Fifth Avenue, decked out in a suit that probably cost more than my rent. Couldn't deny it. The guy looked the part. Walked into that coffee shop like he was strolling into his own personal bank vault, signature grin plastered on his face, charm radiating off him like heat off the subway tracks in August. Watching him, it was like stepping back in time, except now I wasn't the kid he could charm into sharing my homework. Now I was the one holding the handcuffs. Watching Mikey work was like watching a Broadway show, except the script was fraud. Big promises, easy money, exclusive opportunities, all delivered with that smooth New York accent. Just enough jargon to sound legit, not enough to confuse the mark. Through the wire in my ear, I heard Mikey lay it on thick to Mr. Davis, our undercover Detective Miller playing the nervous investor. Mikey pitching his. Can't miss opportunity, sprinkling in just enough flattery to make it personal, make Davis feel special, chosen. Miller played his part perfectly, acting eager but cautious, doing his due diligence. That's when Mikey pulled out the heavy artillery fake contracts, forged return statements, glossy brochures with pictures of smiling investors who were probably stock photos ripped off the internet. Name-dropping fake clients' names we already knew were made up. Sickeningly smooth, masterful, even in a twisted way. But Mikey didn't know every word. Every gesture was being recorded, documented, building the case against him. Brick by brick, when the meet wrapped, Mikey shook Miller's hand. That winning smile plastered on his face, strutted out of the coffee shop like he'd just closed another million-dollar deal. What he didn't know was we were closing in on him. Operation Clean Sweep. So far, so clean. But this was the moment of truth after the coffee shop con. Mikey strolled out completely clueless that his performance had just earned him a starring role in his own arrest. Watching him walk down Bleecker Street in that slick suit radiating that same old high school confidence, it hit me again how surreal this whole thing was. I stayed in the Crown Vic eyes glued to him while Detectives Ramirez and Kowalski plainclothes shadowed him at a discreet distance. Mikey lost in his own world, probably counting his imaginary millions, checked his phone, adjusted his cufflinks. Typical, Mikey always playing the untouchable Wall Street shark. When he turned onto a quieter side street, that's when Ramirez and Kowalski made their move. Michael Mangano, Ramirez called out, stepping into Mikey's path badge flashing. "YPD, we need to have a word." I watched as Mikey froze, just for a split second. Expression flickered. Surprise, maybe a hint of panic, then bam, right back to the smooth operator. Hands up, palms out, that disarming smile. "Back in place, gentlemen," he said. Voice smooth as silk. "What's this about? I'm sure there's been some kind of misunderstanding." Kowalski moved in cuffs, snapping on Mikey's wrists, reading him his rights. Quick, efficient, by the book. Mikey didn't resist, but that smile tightened, edges fraying. He looked around, probably trying to size up the situation, figure out his angles, his outs. That's when I stepped out of the Crown Vic. The moment Mikey saw me, it was like someone hit the pause button. He blinked hard like he was seeing a ghost. Then recognition flooded his face. "Danny," he said, voice laced with disbelief. "Danny Guerra." No way, Mikey, I replied, keeping my voice flat. Professional. Long time. Inside, my stomach was doing flip-flops, a mix of adrenaline, anger, and this weird pang of nostalgia. Looks like you've been keeping busy. For a second, I thought he might try to talk his way out of it. Even now, even with the cuffs on. But then the reality of the situation seemed to sink in. No charm offensive was going to work this time. He wasn't going to sweet talk his way out of this one. Man, he muttered, shaking his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips of all people. Yeah, I said, folding my arms, keeping my gaze locked on his. Funny how things work out, huh? As Ramirez and Kowalski led him to the patrol car, I couldn't help but think about the twisted road our lives had taken. Back in Lincoln High, Mikey was the guy who could get away with anything, and I was the good kid, the rule follower. Now here we were on opposite sides of the law. The hunter and the hunted Mikey wasn't just some cocky kid running small-time scams anymore. He'd crossed the line, jumped into the deep end of real crime, and this time there was no escape. Watching him slide into the back of the squad car, a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness washed over me. This wasn't the ending I would have written for either of us, but it was the one Mikey had chosen. The arrest was done, Mikey was in custody, but as I headed back to the precinct, I knew this was just the beginning. The real work making him pay for what he'd done was just getting started. Bringing Mikey in was just the opening act. The next few days were a blur, paperwork, mountains, endless interviews, digging through the digital wreckage Mikey had left behind, barely had time to grab a decent slice, let alone process the sheer weirdness of arresting someone I'd known since grade school. Back at the precinct, Mikey was classic. Mikey, cool, calm, just smug enough to make you want to slam your fist through a wall. Clammed up tight, lawyered up, didn't understand why he was here the whole song and dance, but the evidence was a screaming opera. We'd seized his laptop, his burner phone, a couple of encrypted hard drives during the arrest. When our forensics team cracked those open, it was like Pandora's box on steroids. Mikey had kept meticulous records of his scams, every lie, every forged document, every victim's name and number. Probably figured he was untouchable. Nobody would ever get close enough to see the rot underneath fake contracts. Victim lists, offshore accounts in the Caymans, it was all there laid out in black and white, and the scale of it was staggering. Mikey hadn't just conned a few suckers. He'd built a goddamn empire of deceit, reaching victims from coast to coast. Small business owners trying to keep their dreams alive, retirees counting on their nest eggs, even a couple of nonprofits trying to do good in the world, all sucked into Mikey's vortex of lies, all believing his promises of easy riches. One case hit me like a punch to the gut. Maria Sanchez, single mom working 2 jobs, poured her entire savings into Mikey's guaranteed future fund, hoping to give her kids a shot at college. Money vanished. Mikey vanished. Maria left with nothing but bills and broken promises, working extra shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on. Reading her statement, it wasn't just anger I felt, it was ice-cold fury. This wasn't just about taking Mikey down, it was about justice for Maria. For all the Maria Sanchez's out there whose lives Mikey had ripped apart, the deeper we dug, the more connections we uncovered. A spiderweb of shell companies, fake identities, burner phones, all designed to keep Mikey one step ahead, invisible. He wasn't just clever, he was meticulous. A criminal mastermind disguised as a charming New York hustler. Every lead we chased was like peeling back another layer of his carefully constructed deception. But for all his smarts, Mikey had gotten cocky, arrogant. He'd left just enough breadcrumbs, digital footprints in the snow for us to follow. And with every piece of evidence we unearthed, his carefully constructed empire started to crumble dust to digital dust. One of the biggest breaks came when Detective Ramirez traced a series of wire transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands registered under a fake name naturally, but the digital signature, the IP address, it all pointed back to Mikey. That single account held over $2 million. Blood money stolen from people who trusted him, believed in him, handed over their futures. Sitting at my desk, staring at the mountain of evidence, I couldn't shake the ghost of the Mikey I used to know. His scams back then, they were small-time, almost laughable kid stuff, but somewhere along the line, something twisted inside him. He decided small-time wasn't enough. He weaponized his charm, his intelligence, turned it into a wrecking ball aimed at innocent lives, and now he was going to face the music, too. Mikey's arrest was all anyone in financial crimes could talk about. For most of my colleagues, he was just another white-collar crook, another greedy face in the city's criminal crowd. But for me, it was personal, whether I wanted it to be or not. Weird thing about seeing someone you grew up with on the wrong side of the law, it messes with your head. Kept replaying memories of Mikey from Lincoln High, trying to connect the dots, trace the path from the lunch money hustler to the $1 million scam artist. One memory kept surfacing. Senior year history project, ended up partners with Mikey, dreaded it. Everyone knew Mikey never pulled his weight, always charmed his way through. But to my surprise, he actually stepped up. Did his share even charmed Mr. Henderson into giving us an extension when we were running behind? Danny, he'd said back then, leaning back in his chair, grinning that cocky grin. Life's all about playing the game. You just gotta know the rules and when to break 'em, sounded like typical Mikey BS back then. But now, staring at his case file, those words felt heavy, loaded with a meaning I hadn't grasped before. Maybe Mikey had always believed that bending the rules wasn't just a strategy, it was his way of life, his philosophy. Still, the question nagged at me: what happened after high school? What pushed him from harmless cons to full-blown criminal schemes? That question was still buzzing in my head when Captain Davies called me in. He wanted me in on Mikey's interrogation, wasn't thrilled about it, too close to the case, too much history, but Davies insisted. "You know him, Danny," he said. "Maybe he'll open up to you." Walked into the interrogation room. Mikey was already there, seated at the steel table, cuffs on, but relaxed, too relaxed. Looked up, smirked, leaned back in his chair. "Well, well, well," he drawled that familiar New York accent. Thick as ever, if it isn't my old pal Danny Guerra, long time no see. Detective ignored the fake buddy-buddy act, pulled up a chair across from him, kept my face neutral. "Mikey," I said, voice steady, "you know why you're here. We've got enough evidence to put you away for a long, long time. Cooperate might make things a little easier on yourself." He shrugged that infuriatingly casual shrug. "You guys think you got it all figured out, huh?" "Guess I should have known you'd end up in a gig like this, Danny, Mr. Law and Order, and I should have known you wouldn't stop hustling people," I shot back, letting a little edge creep into my voice. For a split second, the mask slipped. The smirk faltered. He actually looked almost offended. "You think this is just about hustling?" he scoffed. "Come on, Danny, you don't know the half of it." "Then tell me," I said, leaning forward, pressing him. "Help me understand how the guy who used to sell fake concert tickets turned into someone who ruins lives for a living." Mikey's smirk vanished completely. He leaned forward too, voice low, serious almost, desperate. "You got any idea what it's like out there, Danny?" he asked, eyes intense, searching mine. "This city, this world, people don't give a damn about you unless you're on top. You either play the game, Danny, or you get crushed by it. I didn't ruin lives," he insisted, voice rising slightly. "I gave people hope if they couldn't handle the risk that's on them. Not me." His words hit harder than I expected. Always thought of Mikey as a smooth talker, a con man, but this was different. This was someone who actually believed his own twisted version of reality, who'd convinced himself he was the victim, not the perpetrator. "Hope," I said, shaking my head, disbelief coloring my voice. "You didn't give people hope, Mikey. You took everything they had." He leaned back again, that smug smile creeping back onto his face like a shield. He pulled up when things got too real. "And now you get to be the hero, right, Danny? Congratulations." Looks like we both played our roles perfectly. The interrogation went downhill fast after that. Mikey clammed up again, lawyer's orders, no doubt. But as I walked out of that room, his words. His twisted justification stuck with me. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a true believer, a zealot in the church of greed. Days after the interrogation felt like a race against the clock. Mikey stonewalling his high-priced defense team, circling like vultures, building their case, twisting the narrative. Clear, we needed more than just the paper trail, more than just the digital evidence. We needed faces, voices, victims willing to stand up, to tell their stories, to make Mikey's carefully constructed world crumble in court. Exhausting work, tracking down people scattered across boroughs, across states, people who'd been burned by Mikey, some devastated by their losses, some strangely numb, detached, like they'd never really believed in the get-rich-quick dream Mikey sold them. But some. The heartbreaking ones, the ones who'd bet it all, bank loans, second mortgages, retirement funds, the ones who'd trusted him blindly, because they wanted to believe they needed to believe. Wasn't just about the money anymore, that much became clear. The deeper I dug, the more I saw Mikey's operation wasn't just about greed, it was about control, manipulation, power. He made people feel like they were part of something exclusive, something bigger than themselves, a secret club of winners, and once he had them hooked, dangling on the promise of riches, they were too scared to walk away, too invested in the illusion of success he'd created. They became dependent on him, on his lies. Thought about that a lot. Staring at his records, his fake emails, fabricated success stories, endless spreadsheets filled with inflated numbers. Every victim he'd manipulated, every lie he'd spun a thread in the web he'd woven. And every thread was another opportunity for him to take more bleed than dryer. But this time, I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Trial date looming felt like I'd been running a marathon uphill, no finish line in sight. Mikey's defense team pulling out every trick in the book, painting him as a victim of circumstance. A well-meaning businessman who'd just gotten in over his head, never intended to hurt anyone. All a misunderstanding. Classic Mikey, never taking responsibility, always playing the victim. But sitting in that courtroom watching him smirk at the judge, I saw through the act. Saw the fear flickering behind the bravado. Deep down, he knew the walls were closing in, knew he couldn't charm his way out of this one. Not this time. Prosecution laid out our case piece by painstaking piece, the evidence, the emails, the contracts, the surveillance footage from the coffee shop, sting each piece hammering another nail into Mikey's coffin. Could see him fidgeting in his seat, that signature cocky attitude, cracking, crumbling bit by bit under the weight of the truth. Then it was my turn, took the stand, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And I did. Told the jury about Mikey's past our high school days, how even back then he'd always been one step ahead, bending the rules, pushing the limits, but I also told them about the victims. Maria Sanchez, Mrs. Esposito, all the nameless faces behind the case files, the lives he'd shattered, the dreams he'd stolen. Kept my voice steady, factual, let the evidence speak for itself. When I finished, Mikey didn't look at me. Eyes fixed straight ahead, staring at some point beyond the courtroom walls, and for the first time I saw him not as Mikey, the mouth mangano, the charming hustler, but as something else, something smaller, something broken, a man too far gone to turn back. Waiting, that was the hardest part. After the evidence, after my testimony, all we could do was sit, wait, let the jury do their work. Mikey sat there stone-faced, his high-powered lawyer whispering in his ear, probably feeding him lines, last-ditch strategies, anything to spin the narrative to conjure some miracle defense. But the air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation, with the weight of inevitability. Mikey didn't look like the kid who'd pranked me in history class or helped me sneak into Yankee games with fake tickets. He looked defeated, exhausted, that's what I was. Case had drained me, not just the hours, the paperwork, the endless phone calls chasing every lead, but the emotional weight of it, the constant tug of war between the cop and the kid who'd grown up with Mikey Mangano. Spent so many years seeing Mikey through the haze of high school nostalgia, the funny stories, the harmless scams. How could that kid, the kid I'd known, become this person? How could someone I'd once called a friend turn into a criminal mastermind, a predator in a suit? Jury came back faster than anyone expected. Heart hammered against my ribs, courtroom fell silent. Every breath held captive. Foreman stood, cleared his throat, read the verdict. Guilty on all counts, words hit like a physical blow, even though I knew it was coming. Guilty. Mikey's face barely flickered, but I saw the tension in his jaw clench, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hands. He wasn't getting away with it. Not this time. Judge banged the gavel, sentencing Mikey to 20 years in federal prison. Relief washed over me, a cold, sterile relief mixed with a strange emptiness. Justice served, but no victory parade, no celebratory high fives, just quiet. Mikey led away by court officers, head down, hands cuffed behind him. As he passed by me, glance flickered up, met mine for a split second. No smirk, no bravado, just a look defeat, regret, maybe even a flicker of fear. Courtroom emptied quickly, everyone rushing out back to their lives. Found myself alone in the hallway, taking in the silence, the weight of what had just happened. Caught him, did my job, but didn't feel like a win. Justice, strange thing. You pour everything into bringing someone down, dive into their darkness, uncover their secrets. Watch their world crumble, then the gavel falls, the sentence is read, and silence. The satisfaction I thought I'd feel never really materialized. Kept wondering, had I done enough? Had Mikey even gotten what he deserved? Stayed late at the precinct that night, staring at my computer screen, the case files still open, glowing in the dim light of the office. Case closed officially, but I couldn't stop scrolling through the victim statements. Maria Sanchez, Mrs. Esposito, dozens of others, their stories looping in my mind, a broken record of shattered lives, not just numbers on a spreadsheet, real people. Real pain. People who'd trusted someone they thought was their friend, a fellow New Yorker. And then the question, nagging, persistent, had Mikey always been this way? Or had the city, the game, turned him into this? Too easy to write him off as just a bad guy, a born criminal. But the more I thought, the less it added up. Needed air, needed to clear my head. Walked out into the city, night streets, quiet hum of late-night traffic, a distant murmur. Felt like I was still in limbo. Case closed, but not really over. That's when I saw her. Emily standing by a small coffee shop, arms crossed, looking up at the sky like she was searching for answers in the constellations. Emily, one of Mikey's victims, invested everything hoping to turn her life around, start a bakery, her dream. Crashed and burned when Liberty Investments imploded. Spoke to her during the investigation, phone calls, formal interviews. But this was the first time face to face since the trial, Danny, she said softly. Voice a mix of sadness, something else I couldn't place, been meaning to. Thank you. Stopped walking, turned to her. No need, I said, voice quiet. You were just one of many, but glad you got some justice. Emily shook her head, small bitter laugh escaping her lips. Justice, she said. Don't know about justice, Danny. Maybe for some of us, but not for all of us. Mikey's going to prison. Yeah, but I'll never get back what I lost. None of us will lump formed in my throat. Wasn't something I'd expected to hear, but it was the truth, raw and unfiltered. Justice sometimes didn't bring closure. You're right, I said quietly. But at least he can't hurt anyone else. Emily nodded slowly. Silence stretched between us, city noises fading into the background. Just don't understand, she said finally, voice barely a whisper. Why did he do it? Why us? Didn't have an answer. Wanted to say something comforting, something to ease the pain, but no magic words, no easy fixes for wounds this deep. Instead, I just said the only thing I knew to be true. People like Mikey, they don't see the harm, they think they're smarter than everyone else. Untouchable. But trail off didn't need to finish the sentence. Emily looked at me long moment, weighing my words, searching for something I didn't have. Then with a sigh, she nodded. Maybe she said softly. But at what cost? Hit me harder than I expected. Mikey had ruined so many lives, but in the process, he'd destroyed his own. Not just freedom lost, but something deeper, something essential lost along the way. Walked back to the Crown Vic city lights blurring around me, trying to shake off the heavy feeling that had settled in my chest. Caught Mikey. Did my job. But sometimes justice just didn't feel like enough.